Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're watching from today. And welcome to today's Managed Methods webinar, Cyber Safety and Security for K-12 Schools, How Cloud Monitoring Protects Students and Data in Google Workspace and Microsoft 365. And before we get started, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items here today. So all attendees are muted for the session, but feel free to ask questions in the chat panel at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end, because yes, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So please submit those questions via the chat panel, and if you'd like, let us know where you're watching from today, so we can get a feel for our audience and where you all are at. And then this webinar is being recorded and will be available shortly afterwards, usually within 24 hours. And will be sent via email. So keep an eye out for that in your inbox. David, you can move up to the agenda there real quick. So we'll start off today by going over a quick introduction of managed methods for those who may still be unfamiliar. And then we'll get into the topic of cybersecurity and safety in Google and Microsoft 365. And then you'll hear from two panelists that we have joining us today, who will share their firsthand experience and their insights on these two topics. And then we'll get into how the two areas, cyber safety and security, are more blended today and moving forward. So, with that, I'll introduce our moderator and panelists real quick. So we have David Waugh, our Chief Revenue Officer here at Managed Methods. And then we are joined by Diana Gill, the Director of Technology at East Porter County School Corporation, and Cody Walker, the Director of Technology at West Rusk ISD in Texas. And then Diana is joining us from Indiana. I didn't say that. So David, I'll let you take it away from here.
Well, thank you very much, Jake. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone out there in the education world. I'll say good morning for those of you that are in the Pacific and Mountain time zones, and good afternoon for those of you in the Central and Eastern time zones. Again, thank you for joining us. My name is David Waugh, and I'm coming to you live from our Managed Methods headquarters in Boulder, Colorado, at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, just outside of Denver, Colorado. Thank you for joining us for today's event. A very timely, a very sensitive, and a very urgent topic, and that is of cyber safety and security for our K-12 school districts. As a father of two school-age children, a spouse to somebody who works in the elementary education profession, and as a business individual, that here at our company Managed Methods, we see this front and center every day, and we're happy to have this opportunity to talk to you about this topic. And I'm excited today to have some great guests with us today that will share real world insights coming from their perspective. So as Jake talked about, we're going to give a quick little overview of the landscape and kind of who we are and what we do. So for those of you that are not familiar with us here at Managed Methods, we are a software company that provides security, safety, data compliance solutions for Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, and Zoom video communication, Zoom meeting. And we're providing specifically greater visibility and control to help districts get a handle on cybersecurity, cyber safety, staying compliant, and protect the data within the school districts. Currently today, we are protecting thousands of schools around the United States, Canada, and a few schools internationally in the UK and Australia as well. We support and have partnerships with Google, Microsoft, and Zoom, and are looking to expand to others in the coming year. And we are FERPA, COPA, and SPC certified, and we take the security and the data privacy very, very seriously. And we are proud to be members of the Student Data Privacy Consortium Signatory Pledge, and work closely with COSIN, the Consortium of School Networking. One of the things that we are really keen and focused on is making sure that we provide an additional layer of security, and in some cases the front line of security when it comes to the cloud layer, which is arguably one of the fastest growing segments within a data center, the infrastructure, if you would, within a school district. More cloud apps have worked their way into the system, especially in the past year under the pandemic, whether they've been approved and vetted by the district or not. Cloud applications now can be accessed pretty much from anywhere and any device, and making sure that you have cybersecurity and data privacy, monitoring and visibility and control and regulations on that is very, very important. And then student safety is always critical, and it's become even more of a front and center conversation in the past year due to the pandemic and the fact that there's so many remote and distributed students and staff members within a school environment now. So what we're doing specifically here at Managed Methods is specifically around monitoring and enforcing security rules and controls around Google Workspace, formerly known as the G Suite for education, Microsoft 365, and Zoom video communication, Zoom meeting. And specifically diving further into that, getting into the email, the file sharing, the chat, the video communications, environments like we're in right now. And when you boil it down, if you peel back all the layers, it's about cybersecurity, it's about compliance, it's making sure that data stays where it's supposed to be. It's not being shared inappropriately. There's not malicious threats coming from the outside in. There's not data that's being compromised, whether it's personally identifiable information about students or staff, whether it's financial information from the district. And then an ever increasing landscape is that of third-party applications. More and more API connections come into school districts these days, connecting various systems, and more security threats arise with that. And each state now is passing more strict and stringent laws around data privacy, and schools need to be aware as to what third parties have access to that data. And then we transition to the other side of this conversation, and that is of the cyber safety. And Managed Methods is proud to have introduced our advanced machine learning technology that we call Signals this past year. And the cyber safety Signals is crucial, and it's critical to make sure that we're protecting the well-being of our student body as well as our staff members. So we're focused on these areas specifically, again, with school districts like our guest today within their Google environments, their Microsoft, and their Zoom environments. So I'm pleased to welcome our first guest here. As Jake had introduced, we have Diana and Cody with us today, and very excited to have these friends of ours join us today and share with us some of their experiences and their expertise. Ms. Diana Gill is the Director of Technology at East Porter County School Corporation out in the Hoosier state of Indiana. And Diana is joining us today, taking time out of her busy day. A little background: Diana, had before becoming a technology director, had served as the instructional technology coach for 4 years, and has brought that skill set of understanding both sides of the table, from the instructional side of the house over to the technology side. And she's been working with us here at Managed Methods for nearly 2 years now. So thank you for joining us, Diana, and great looking t-shirt you got there, rocking the Managed Methods shield. And we like that shield out there because that's the superheroes like you and Cody helping protect us. So Diana, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me here today. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
We are as well, and I think everyone out there is excited to hear and know what people are doing out there. So let's just dive right into it. I'm going to go ahead and hit the button on the screen there. So let's start with, what has the role been? What is has been the role of cloud security in regards to student safety monitoring within the schools? What do you see from your perspective as a technology director? And how do we as Managed Methods play into that with you?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, we would not be able to do our jobs diligently without a service such as this. Our principals, our guidance counselors, and all of our administrators rely on the notifications that we get from Managed Methods to kind of be that piece in between technology and humans, so we can act on the things that we need to act on. Sometimes Managed Methods becomes the thing that I use to investigate something that a person alerts me to, and other times it's the other way around. Managed Methods alerts us to something that we can then respond to keep our students and staff safe. And I've seen a huge uptick of the use of this tool with all of the SEL concerns that we have right now, and just being online more often. So in a small school district like Cody and I both work in, Managed Methods almost becomes like another staff member that we rely on for these sorts of things.
Well, thank you. That's glad to know that we're reliant upon that. I apologize, my screen just froze. Are you still seeing the screen there? Thank you. My computer just all of a sudden popped a notification up. Well, let's move along to the next, on that same lines. When we talk about student safety signals, the technologies and the technology there and that technology teams have to address, what is it that, in your school you think needs to be monitored the most?
Well, as far as students go, the interaction, the way that they interact with each other and the language that they use, whether it's violent language, bullying, self-harm, these are the things that are always the #1 priority for administrators. And then just so that's sort of like a student safety piece, but I've also seen the way that I use Managed Methods has kind of shifted since COVID. A week, sometimes even a day doesn't go by where we are not potential victims to a phishing campaign. And so Managed Methods has been, I'm in there every day. It's sort of like I start my day checking the help desk and sitting down with Managed Methods and taking a look at the risks that and all of those alerts and the suspicious logins and stuff. So it's kind of like it directs the work and how I'm going to interact with the other people that work here throughout the day. But as far as specific to student safety, most of the alerts come from the way that students are interacting with each other in the Google environment. So the language that they're using will then tip us off to some behavior redirection.
Okay, and that's perfect, as that alludes to my next question is, where these student safety signals appear most and where you're monitoring, and you just alluded to that. So, and do you have some specific examples where you have seen incidents that have popped up in the environment?
Yeah, and this is like sort of the icky part of the job. You don't want it to feel like you in these situations where I have to get in and kind of dig and see how the students are behaving online, that it can feel kind of icky. And I kind of sound like I work for Managed Methods, but I've used a number of these platforms over the years, and I'm just so happy that it saves time in digging through some of these things. So 2 bigger instances come to mind. One, we had a group of students using very violent language. A big group of students, they were all in a Google Slides presentation using white font. And so if a teacher passed by, it would just look like a blank slide presentation. But they were communicating with each other using that white font and saying some really terrible things. And so Managed Methods was a tool that I used after a principal prompted me to do this, not just doing this for fun. I was able to get in and provide the documentation that they needed to help students kind of redirect their behavior. And then even more recently, we had some students, it's a very politically charged time that we are currently experiencing, and we had some students having some discourse with one another around some political topics. And the principals were worried about disrupting the school environment. So I was able to get in and temporarily quarantine those files. So they were pulled out of the student drives. I scanned them quickly to make sure there was nothing too malicious going on. And once I was able to see that there wasn't anything malicious going on, I reported that back to the principal and then was able to float those files back to the kids. Because I also don't want to big brother them and take things away when they're not actually doing anything wrong. So most of the time, I think, and I'll speak to this later, a tool like this, it's visible in certain ways, especially when it becomes the way that you're helping humans work through their, these aren't necessarily technology problems, right? They're human problems. And so that part of this tool has been really visible in our district. And what I like about it is that it's impacted like the culture and the way that we talk about these sorts of things. And so it has, I guess, in the situation where like all the examples I've given you are somewhat negative, it also kind of opens the door to talk about how we are using a lot of different platforms to keep our students and our staff safe. You know, a classroom teacher, I think sometimes technology departments get a bad rap, right? Like, you guys have a bunch of rules, you block things, you are looking at our stuff. And while we know that there are reasons behind the decisions that we make in the technology world, a classroom teacher might not have that information given to them with any sort of transparency. And so this tool has really been a way to open up some of those conversations, instead of saying like, well, why can't I use my East Porter Google account to use Google single sign-on to shop on Wish? Well, here's why, right? And so it kind of, for me, it really is about that education piece.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very good insight. And you're right. It's too many times I see the challenges between the technology department and the rest of the district, because like you just shared, sometimes they look at you as almost like you're you're constantly monitoring everything that's going on, or you're preventing them from getting access to something. And again, going back to your experience coming from the instructional technology side, you see both sides of the coin, you understand, but at the end of the day, you have to stop and protect the interests of the district and your constituents, who are the staff members and the students. And it's funny you mentioned, I just was on a call earlier this morning with a school district in which Wish was an app that Rish, and what's the other one that comes up a lot is Rakuten. We see a lot in school districts from shopping. But well, thank you for sharing how you've used the technology and just overall your view of it, and that topic around culture is important to understand that technology can be used as a great asset for the school from not only learning but productivity, but we have to be cautious on how we use it. I think that's one of the primers there. Well, thank you, Diana. We'll come back momentarily, circle back to you. Let's have your partner here on the panel speak up now. And again, that's a good looking shirt. Somehow you and Jake and I must have got the memo that we have to wear the same shirt today. I should have worn my t-shirt, so then Diana and I would have been on the same team. But Cody Walker, thank you so much, my friend, for joining us. Good to see you there. For those of you out there that don't know our friend here, Cody is the Director of Technology for West Rusk School District down in Texas. And the town, I believe, is called New London. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. Yes, sir. New London, Texas. The town actually has less population than the school district. So imagine that.
Well, I can imagine that in places in Texas for sure. Well, Cody, thank you for joining us. Cody's been a longtime veteran of the technology department there within the school district, and Cody also has been with us for a little over a year now, and we appreciate you being a part of the family here as well. So we'll jump into it with you and hear some of your perspectives. So, how critical is cloud security monitoring in K through 12 schools today? Whether you're big or small. Now, especially since staff and students really have gotten into a groove of being able to access their data anytime, anywhere, any place, whether they're in the traditional classroom or whether they were remote during the pandemic. So how critical is the cloud security monitoring now in this environment?
Right, absolutely. So it's extremely important. Back 5-6 years ago when we first started talking about all this, and we started talking about cloud products and different things like that. And I'm a long time G Suite, Gaphy, Google Workspace veteran. We've had it for a long time. We've seen a lot of changes come and go. And with that, we've seen the different ways that Google has implemented products and how they've changed things. Along with that, I don't know how many of our Texas listeners are on, but you'll know that back in September 1st of 2019, Senate Bill 820 required districts to have a security coordinator. They required them to adopt a policy. And then what's most important, what is so critical about this, is to report any breach of, David, how you mentioned that PIA, which for our listeners, that's the personally identifiable information. And any of that data had to be monitored. And I'll say it like this. when you enroll your district into something such as Google Workspace, and you're so excited and you're rolling out all of these products and you're creating hundreds upon hundreds or thousands upon thousands of users, and you may have a team or you maybe have one person, and you get to the point of where you're ready to sit back and look at what all you've been able to accomplish through rolling out this cloud product. You may sit back and think then, how am I going to monitor all this? What am I going to do now? And I'll say this, you're going to remember two different times. And like Diana said, it kind of sounds like we're working for Managed Methods, and we're not. It's really that good of a product. You're going to remember a time before you had Managed Methods, and then you're going to remember, or you're going to appreciate how good and how useful it is now. So, being able to monitor what your staff and your students are doing is extremely critical.
Thank you. And thank you both. I know that, guilty, I did send you, Managed Methods clothing to wear. I am guilty of that, but we also send that out to all of our friends. But thank you. That means a lot. And I know that, we see it a lot in the 4 years we've had the product into the market. People do move positions, they change jobs. And, speaking of it there in the Lone Star State, Cody, recently I had a call come from a school director, a technology director we work with. They had been with us at a previous school. They moved on to a new school at the start of the year, and they're bringing us into their new school because they talked about, hey, I tried to, go it alone, but I need Managed Methods to help us at this school too. So we appreciate that. And regardless of whether it's us or any technology, I mean, at the end of the day, we are advocates that schools must have the visibility. We'd love it for it to be Managed Methods, but we're advocates about proper security practices and make sure you have some form of monitoring in place. And we believe that that's definitely critical. So let's talk about what the role of cloud security has played into the classrooms at West Rusk, especially as you had to maybe entertain new applications that you hadn't used before, like more involved with Google Classroom from the technology security perspective, or maybe Google Meet or Zoom. Tell us about how that has come out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with COVID, everyone has realized that two things: you have to have a way to virtually meet. And once you're virtually meeting, whether that's Zoom or if you're in the instructional side of it all, it's a must. Everyone uses Google Classroom. If they don't use Google Classroom, it's Canvas or Blackboard or something like that. But I'm sure that all K-12 districts, they have adopted that Google Classroom way, as well as Google Meet, Zoom, different things like that. And they've started probably running into different issues to where everyone's like, oh yeah, Zoom, it's great, it's free for the most part, and we can do everything with our Google Classroom and have our students in there. And then all of a sudden they come across, wait, hold on, why isn't this working? I don't understand. And so Managed Methods helps us identify different security issues that would come to play. And I want to give you this example. Back during the height of it all, when we decided as a school district back last spring, almost a year ago now, to go ahead and do virtual classrooms, everyone was just plugging in all their personal Gmail information, or at least attempting to. And that brings forth a way for students and staff, because staff isn't exempt, to bring in outside information into your domain, or try and bring it into your Google Workspace that's not related to your domain. So how are you going to know what they're actually bringing in? We've also had different issues with accounts, with security audits and different things like that. And helping identify that was the reports that we get based upon the security aspect of it all. For me, one thing that I really like, and I look at it almost every day, I like being able, you mentioned since we're all digitally mobile and, you know, we can access it anywhere at any time, I like being able to log into my Managed Methods dashboard and be able to see where are my users logging in from. As Diana pointed out, you know, it kind of seems like we're the bad guys here, you know, we're the fun police. But at the end of the day, we're trying to provide a good and healthy environment, a safe environment for our staff and our students. And, you know, seeing cloud security and managed methods blend together, it works very, very seamlessly for something that is so mission critical.
Well, and you know, that's the objective, like you said, is, you know, you don't want to be the no fun, you know, league, if you would. You're trying to help, but it's about making sure first and foremost you're, you know, protecting the interest. And at the same time, you and Diana, like so many other technology professionals we talk to, whether it's a small school or whether it's a very, very large school, mission number one is you're trying to keep the lights on, keep the systems running, make sure that during testing the internet's working and everybody has access to the computers, and
Absolutely.
making sure the classes are still happening. Very, very few school districts have a dedicated staff or even a dedicated person that their sole job is just security and safety. Some do, and they're fortunate to have that, but others, and the vast majority, do not. So I think you definitely, you know, hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, let's transition then to, and you've already kind of alluded to this question, you know, what is the impact that these collaboration and communication platforms have had on how you approach security? You know, example, you mentioned Google and Google Workspace, the artist formerly known as G Suite, but how has that changed the dynamic now that everybody is in more of these web-based collaboration, whether it's Canvas or Google or Zoom or whatever it may be? What is your take on that now?
Yeah, it's made for all of us, directors, our system administrators, you know, security personnel, to have to become more or less general surgeons for security and cloud security. Because I'll ask you this, sitting in front of you right now, how many operating systems do you have in front of you? And as well as for all our listeners, you may be listening on a Windows operating system, but you have your iPhone next to you. They can both do the same thing, right? You could have both joined from your iPhone or your Android device, and you can all plug in with those same communication platforms, but you might have at the end user vantage point of it all, different operating systems. So the nice thing is for the rest of us that, you know, are tasked with monitoring, you know, the security aspect of it all of those things do come back through Google Workspace. But also, you know, Zoom brought along a whole different aspect of it all that really kind of opened our eyes, as well as so did COVID. So whenever we bring together all of our collaboration tools, for us, it's nice to be able to have that single pane of glass for managed methods. You know, I don't want to preach on it too much, but for me, being able to log in and see the risks that's associated with different endpoints. And I'll give this one example because it actually popped in today. It was actually a few minutes before we hopped on this call. And I don't know if I can say the movie's title out in the open, so I'll elude the title. But there was a movie that was made, I think about a year ago, that involved social aspects of life and how difficult it has become for online privacy. Well, that's kind of twofold, isn't it? So as we have our end devices and we're communicating, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need a school-owned Chromebook. It doesn't mean that we're sitting in the computer lab. We can be on our personal devices. We can be sending Google Chat or Google Meet, or we could be doing Hangouts when that was a thing, or something as simple as sending emails back and forth between students. And that's what exactly happened today. There was some social pressure from some of the students. So they decided to implement a way of, I guess, disciplining themselves. So with that, they went into a bathroom and hurt themselves. Well, we were able to kind of take quick intervention because of a tool such as Managed Methods. Well, when it all came down to it, our previous tools that we use for remote management of things like Windows and Chrome OS, things like that, they would have never have caught it. But since we're looking at cloud-based, collaboration and cloud-based communication, Managed Methods pick back up on it really, really quick. And we were able to identify the people that needed to be notified of the issue.
And this is because they were sharing it in a Google environment. You said was it in a document or an email or both?
It was in Hangouts, in chat.
In chat.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, and thank you for sharing that, Cody. And unfortunately, the sad side of this business, and again, as a parent and a professional working in this space, I feel for the things that you and Diana and other IT directors have to address along with the teachers and the staff, because when we get the circumstances such as self-harm, or harm to others, that always becomes a sensitive and scary topic. Well, thank you for sharing, Cody. Let's go ahead now and let's continue, and we'll transition now into more of the kind of the power roundtable here. We'll do kind of the speed dating question aspect now. So I'll bring up a question, and then I'll ask each of you to respond, and we'll go through the next few minutes. We got about 5 or 6 more questions we'll jump through. So when we talk about best practices, can you both share how regarding how you balance the two areas when it comes to monitoring cloud activities? So you're talking about the best practices on how you're balancing monitoring, security, safety, but keeping this kind of balance as you talked about, so you're not the no fun league, if you would. So I'll start. Diana, let's come back to you.
I mean, I kind of address it in a way that I don't necessarily make these decisions on my own. I'm making them based on FERPA and COPA and SEPA and copyright terms of service. And so when you have these conversations with educators, it's always easier if you do use the word no, to come up with an alternate, right? So if there's a third-party tool or an app or a Chrome extension that teachers want to use, and we determine that it's kind of unsafe, a no is just kind of like an opportunity to find something better potentially. And so I guess if you're sticking to the truth of why you're making those decisions, it's really not a decision you're making on your own. You're guided by best practices and guidelines. So,
okay, Cody.
Yeah, I would say regards to monitoring the cloud activity, trying to remain unbiased. I don't remember who said it a little while ago. You're going to come across some stuff that you do not like seeing. You're going to come across some things that is pretty ugly. And don't take the data for face value. I would say use Managed Methods as a tool to dig deeper into it and see what exactly is going on. Because previous to that, you probably had very, very little insight. But now that you do have that insight, don't run at the first sign of smoke, right? Make sure that you do a thorough investigation. Make sure that you remain unbiased. And kind of like Diana said, we should be just the conduits for that information so that they can go to the appropriate party.
Right. And I also don't want to give the impression, and I'm sure, Cody, I don't want to speak for you, but you'd probably agree, I don't spend a giant slice of my day doing this kind of work. That's sort of the point of having Managed Methods. It makes it a smaller part of my day. And there are days when it does take up, depending on what's going on, but I just don't want the listeners to have this impression that this is now my job to look through these things,
That's a great point, Diana. And, I think you alluded to that at the beginning. You kind of have a routine you start the day with, and you go through a couple different checklists of things. And one of those checklist items you go through is taking a glance at our dashboard. And that's what we, for the audience out there, just so you know, and we encourage everyone to take a look at the product, but that's what we try to set out to do, is we're trying to manage many of the different feeds of information coming in to give you a more quick and concise view. Well, thank you for sharing that. Let's jump along maybe to now our next question. We'll start this one with you, Cody. So how does student data privacy bring cyber safety and security together? And you alluded to SB 820 in the state of Texas there, which obviously we're very familiar with as well. So how do you answer this question?
Yeah, so previously, probably everyone just thought of SIPA, COPA law, things like that. How can we filter? How can we stop, the bad websites from coming in? But now in today's age, cyber safety and security has moved way beyond just the keyboard and the monitor in the high school computer lab, right? Bringing those two together has really helped people bring insight to what's really happening, not just necessarily as a nuts and bolts thing, what's happening on their network, but what is the dynamics in their student population. What is the latest and greatest thing that's happening with the kids? Because sometimes we can become disconnected, but yet being able to have these tools, which, like you said earlier, are for the most part autonomous, because I don't personally want to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and see what somebody's doing on behalf of their school account. But it gives us insight by bringing those two portions of it together on what's happening.
Diana?
Yeah, and I think it sort of is a tangible way to look at what our responsibilities are as educators, both inside of the classroom and out. Our role in the technology department are to provide these services, but I also think we have to go beyond just providing those services and like bringing a level of understanding into the classrooms, because I think our kids need to walk out of school understanding the importance of some of these things. And certainly a teacher isn't able to share those pieces of information if they're not comfortable talking about them themselves. So, I'm always going to kind of err on the side of most of our problems are human caused, not technology. And so like whenever a teacher is upset, like back when I first started using Google Docs, I had a boss who thought I was encouraging cheating because they could collaborate. It's like, cheating's not new. And it's not made easier necessarily by technology. It's just a different way to do it. And so I always want to like start with the human part of the problem. Technology is not to blame for it. So I think it's just really tangible, like what our true responsibility is.
Very well said. And I think, I heard a quote from one of our CIOs that we work with at a school district one time. She pointed out that too many times people assume adding technology equals innovation, and innovation is a human element, not necessarily a technology element. And as you alluded to, I'm a little bit older than all of you. Back in the day, it was passing notes and doing things on paper, and we still used chalkboards. And now today, you talked about it even earlier, Diana, with students using a Google Doc and thinking they're savvy and let's use white fonts. So innovation, it's the human element. Speaking of that collaboration, and let me hit our next question here. How have you, as a technology professionals and your teams, how have you collaborated, worked with your counselors, your district administration when it comes to ensuring students are safe in these cloud environments? And particularly, maybe how have you used managed methods to collaborate in that aspect? I'll start with you, Diana.
I saw someone ask this question in the chat a second ago. Doesn't it make sense to have some of those alerts go straight to the people who would be handling them? And yeah, managed methods allows for that.
Yes.
So there's no interaction from like IT to students. Most of the times the principals know about what's going on way before I do, because they get alerts to it with violent language or whatever. So working with social workers and counselors and district and building administrators to understand what this tool does and how they can utilize it as well. Mm-hmm. What does it look like when you get a false positive, that sort of thing?
Cody?
Yeah, so Diana's right, and I'll jump right on top of the false positive thing. You know, as with any good tool, sometimes if your counselor or your principals give you information that says, "Hey, I don't know why I'm still getting these alerts," if you know there was one about a play that was happening. Anyways, it was shared in the Google Drive, and you know, as that was shared, it generated more and more hits based upon the content of the file itself. So, you know, they can relate back to us and say, "Hey, I'm not really sure this is quite right," and we can jump in and do a little bit of tuning. And she's not here today, but I want to say something about a managed methods employee who is really, really good, and that's Marcy that works there. She is a real go-getter. So yes, absolutely. She's going to help you get it tuned up when things aren't quite right. You know, as with anything, it needs a little bit of help, as it is mostly autonomous. But also, it's helped us gear what's happening, say at our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, isn't necessarily the same issues or problems or risks or alerts that comes up for our, you know, higher end, our, you know, 9th through 12th, and where, you know, our younger kids are facing problems of, well, young kid problems, where, you know, in our secondary schools, we see things along the lines of where they start to think that, you know, we start having more adult-related issues that need to be taken care of. But also with that, I want to say one thing: working with our counselors and our principals, there's nothing worse than trying to give them a report from our content filter that makes absolutely no sense, you know? And I know, Diana, you probably know exactly what I'm saying. It's just like, okay, this is a great report, but how can you translate it for me? So I really can appreciate the aspect of being able for them to read the reports that they get.
Well, and that's something, you know, you both kind of alluded to in that communication, and this is where we talk about also. I like to say it takes a village, and when I do presentations at various education conferences around the country, or I'm on these types of sessions, too many times I'll have someone come up to me, you know, whether it's a new tech director or it's a superintendent or a principal, and they're like, "Well, we've got a content filter in place, or we have, you know, isn't Google or Microsoft taking care of these things for us?" And you kind of alluded to that with talking about, you know, working through reports. And I just got an email here from one of our customers. They had to drop off the webinar, but Ed said, "Hey, remind them." And I applaud what the speaker just said about Marcy and your entire team, and remind them about all of the training you guys provide. You know, and I see this with some of the questions that are popping up in the chat. You know, we're here to help, and we're firm believers in that. You know, you kind of talked about this just now, Cody, and that you have to know how to use the technology. Now, we try to build a very simple, intuitive, and easy to use and very friendly. You just talked about that with our reports and the information. But this individual who just sent me this email, they also use the advanced paid for tool sets from Google, but one of the things they always share about is our product is not only more intuitive and easy to use for them, but they don't have to worry about going to a special training class or sending their users to a special training class, because the managed methods team is providing that for them. And that's what you just said. Thank you. Marcy will like to hear that. And she is a rock star. And we have a lot of great rock stars on that team. So thanks for sharing that. And that's important to how you as a technology team not only utilize our technology, but how you utilize the technology to share this with others, whether it be counselors, a student safety team, whether it's you know, principals and admins. And somebody did ask that question in the chat about, wouldn't you route these things? And yes, we are advocates for that. Our product can route these different types of alerts to different people. You may want to have, you know, we have a lot of school districts that use our product on both Microsoft and Google. So cybersecurity alerts get divided up to, you know, if it's a Google alert, it's going to the Google team. Microsoft alert goes to the Microsoft team. If it's a student safety issue, it's going to a social worker or a principal or an admin within that district itself. So, or within that school building, et cetera. So let's move along, and I want to make sure we save some time for some Q&A at the end here. We'll start with you, Cody, on this one. So how do you see this changing with the in-person, going remote, coming back to in-person learning. You joined us during the pandemic. So, how do you see this changing when the in-person learning returns back to a full norm? Because, some places in the country, we're still not back to that. But when
Right.
students are moving between, home and school, and now more districts have one-to-one devices as a result of the pandemic, how do you see the landscape changing, and how has managed methods maybe played into that?
Yeah, so beforehand, and I'm going to kind of go back to the content filter idea, to where, it has to be on site in order for it to be managed. It has to be on site in order for it to be filtered. But also it has to be on site for you to be able to provide a positive and, most important, safe learning environment for your students. But also, most importantly, for your staff, because think about how many bad instances you might have had in Zoom, right? Or how many bad instances there could have been had you not been able to put the policies in place, as well as being able to identify any type of configuration issues with those types of cloud collaboration platforms, such as Google Classroom. So, to put it into perspective, real in just a couple of words here, the technology is not necessarily changing as far as what we're putting in our hands, but it's changing the way we are able to use it. And we've been able to become so dynamic and so flexible as kids and teachers and staff has gone home, such as y'all have shared with me that you've been able to remain flexible. This has enabled us to stay flexible as well, to where, prior to hand, we wouldn't have any insight, and we would be very much struggling to provide a good environment for all of our students and staff.
Diana?
Yeah, and I think that we were managed methods customers, and have had products like this long before we were fully remote. And I'll say that, like, if there's one good thing I hate, this sounds so cheesy, but if there's one good thing to come from our overnight format shift to teaching virtually across the country, I hope that education is forever changed by that, right? So now everyone was sort of forced to take a risk and learn some new things. And I think, when I talk to teachers in my district, it was really hard, but now they know that they could utilize some of the things that they tried in a way, in person as well, to change the way that they're reaching their students. And so, we were all kind of in survival mode. And I think we're at the place now where we can stop and say, okay, we lived through this whole thing in education. And now it's time to pause and think about some of the things we should have been thinking about before, like safety in online conferencing platforms and things like that. And so for me, I hope that that we see some positive changes as a result of all of this. And now is the time to kind of focus on that cybersecurity and safety piece, for sure.
Well, I agree with you on the change. I think everyone's changed, our whole world, but in the education world that we're talking about today, I think the pandemic, if there has been some silver linings, it has been. It comes back to the innovation. People have adapted, and our hats off to all of you as ed tech professionals as well as educators, because it's been a challenging year. And as a parent, I've watched it, and I've seen some superheroes. My children, I feel fortunate that my children have had some really rock star superhero teachers that have found innovative and fun ways to keep the kids engaged. And like you said, it's changed it. So let's jump to our last question here. And this kind of ties into what you were just sharing, Diana. So I'm going to keep you on this. What about virtual schools? What impact will they have? Are we forever seeing a potential shift that some schools may start offering a 100% virtual option even long after the pandemic?
So just what impact do we think that virtual learning is going to have on?
Yes, sorry, on your jobs and how you have to address with security and safety and whatnot.
Sure. I mean, I feel like I could write a book about this, so I'm going to try to be quick.
You did write a book.
Not about this. I don't know. I think that before we had a window into our classrooms with the adoption of learning management systems, and with that vulnerability comes like a potential opportunity to like do some really beautiful things, right? Like when you change your audience and all of a sudden your audience is the whole world, you're going to be a little bit more careful about how you're putting learning together. So I know that earlier Cody was alluding to a specific movie. I'm thinking of another movie in the same genre. This idea that you behave better. Do you behave better if you know that you're being watched? And I think we probably do, unfortunately. And so I think that the overall impact is just people are watching what we're doing. What we're doing is really important. And so let's do it right and well. That's it.
Cody?
Yeah, Diana's right. We could write a book about this. In fact, there was a prediction made from one of our administrators here at the school district that said, going forward, there's going to be that option, probably, maybe, if they vote on it. They haven't yet, but we've seen to where students can go home. They can be provided education outside of the traditional classroom setting. And with that, how do teachers, staff, your IT departments, your counselors, how do they all, how can they be able to still support that student who's not there in front of them, who is 10, 20 miles away at home? Maybe it's a few blocks down the road, but that student who doesn't go to a traditional classroom setting, for us in IT, that's the challenge all in it all. It almost makes it feel like we've then become the tech support call center, right? My Google Classroom isn't working. And I would say this, prior to that, you would have to have so much assistance from the student and from the teacher, mainly from the teacher, I guess, to where you would say, okay, this student is at home and we have 10 other students like them. They're all logging in. They all have Chromebooks, but yet something isn't working right. And you have to be able to take that microscope, or just say that X-ray device, and look at, and I'm really kind of talking about your configuration of your Google Classroom with your teachers. Because at the end of the day, their job is to do what? Their job is to teach and to provide an education for the students. While us, Diana and myself, our job is to be able to provide an environment, a good and safe environment for them to be able to be educated in. So while we're all working towards the same common goal, I think it's important that we have the appropriate tools that we need to make that common goal a success.
Well said, and thank you both for that insight. And I think Diana, you touched on something, and it's about how we behave if we're online or have people are watching. And some of the things we've even seen, people have told us, hey, once I implemented your product, we sent a message out to everyone and briefed them about what we now have at our capabilities. And it's amazing how the behavior's gotten so much better. So I think, I don't remember if it was in your book or if it's been in one of your podcasts where you talked about people will put a disclaimer about something in a social media saying, my thoughts and opinions are mine and don't reflect that of what I'm doing. It doesn't work that way. We're all in this together. And whether I'm using my work computer, the school district, the personal device, if it's my representation, if I say something, it's out there, and it's going to be, it's either whether that's a cyberbullying situation, whether that's inappropriate content, whether we're talking about cybersecurity, because so many times people are like, well, I just was moving the data to my personal account so that I could work with it offline. That we can't have those types of excuses anymore. So, well, with that said, as we jump into the Q&A, Jake, I don't know if you've been monitoring it, taking a look out there. Do we have some questions? We got about 5 minutes left to go. So want to open it up. If people have questions for Managed Methods, myself, if you have a question for Cody or Diana, go ahead and I think
there's one here. It's Managed Methods focused for us, David, but someone was alluding or asking, is another company having a staff that is dedicated to looking through all those alerts and everything, that come through the school's environment. So this vendor has, staff on site or, remotely, but is that something we're looking to implement down the road? I know the answer, but I'll let you share that.
Well, I think I know what the question is being asked. Again, we are a platform that's designed to help empower and provide insights, the visibility and the control. We are not a professional services monitoring service in terms of we're not today currently offering that. And at this moment, that's not something we plan to, because we think that there's, we have partners out there that do a great job at that. And the vendor in question that I think you're asking about, Jake, or that the audience member asked about, we share the stage with them at many school districts we work with, hand in hand. As I kind of alluded to earlier, and I think Diana and Cody could speak to that, we're not advocating that we're an end-all be-all solution. We're not saying that all you need is Managed Methods, by no means. You need to have a properly vetted and prepared technology stack. And if in your school district, the district wants to have also human professional services that are monitoring and addressing those things and then taking the proactive steps, we support that and advocate that. But in some districts, schools, like somebody else said in here, they use our platform to send the alerts and notifications directly to the principals or the social workers or the teachers so that they can intervene. But that's a good question. But right now we do not at Managed Methods have plans for that. Any other questions?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit, obviously, with teachers, counselors, principals, and everything, and kind of everyone working together as one team. But kind of what has maybe the awareness training looked like, for you, Diana and Cody, say in the past year, and maybe like some best practices, I guess, for folks, when it comes to cybersecurity awareness training or safety awareness training, moving forward as these, as classrooms extend beyond physical buildings. I don't know, any, I guess, like say last thoughts as we kind of get to the top of our hour here.
Awareness training. So I guess what's the best way to answer that? I may be off track here, but kind of like David said earlier, Managed Methods will give you the insight. It will give you the tools. It will give you the information that you need. Now, as far as anything beyond that, I know that a lot of their team can help you, and I don't want to just solely say Marcy, but she is great. They're going to help you to identify, especially in their experience, because unlike myself, which I may have a copier problem at 8 a.m. and then I may have a network problem at 10 a.m. and then I may have an issue that a counselor is coming to me to help pull more reports based upon what they were getting from Managed Methods, to help you fine tune that, to help you figure out what works best for your district. And we are not a metro district, so some of the issues that we see, the students bring a lot of baggage with them outside of the district into the district, if that makes a lot of sense. And I hope I'm on topic there when I answer that question like that. But really being able to fine tune with their team what's going to work best with you. And I would say this, if you get your managed methods environment up and running, let it run for 2, 3, 4 weeks before making a change. That way you can get some better insight on, what's a true false positive and what's a real issue. Because at first, we had a lot coming through, a whole awful lot coming through. And gradually, as we could help identify some of the issues that were false positives, it helped us to see what's really happening in our environment.
Thanks, Cody.
I'll kind of echo that. When we first started with managed methods, Marcy, we did a screen share. She looked at the policies. She kind of helped me think through the policies of how I wanted to set things up. And then what's been really helpful for me is I know the other people in my state who have managed methods, and I'll just call them and I'll say, like, what does this setting look like for you? Do you automatically revoke third party, whatever? And like talking to another person in the field that uses it has helped me kind of fine tune those things too.
That's something that we love hearing. We have so many times where we have districts that want, we introduce groups together, kind of mini virtual user groups within states, kind of birds of feathers. So thanks for pointing that out, Diana, and sharing that. Well, folks, we're running up on the hour here. We appreciate everyone from joining us today. First and foremost, I want to say, Diana, Cody, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and we enjoy it. Diana, I'm going to give you some props. Your book out there, folks, go check out Diana's book out on Amazon that was published. It's been almost 2 years now, hasn't it? Of course,
Copyrighteous.
Yes. And some very good insights there. Diana and Cody are great resources. I'm sure that they're welcome to questions beyond today in the communities they work in, and reaching out. Want to give a quick reminder to everyone out there that we do have a free trial that we do offer up. You just go to managemethods.com. You can also, we'll be sending out copies of the presentation for everybody that attended. You'll get this recording, but you can check out the free trial. Lots of districts I see already while we've been on here coming in the door, signing up for the free trial. We certainly appreciate that. Also coming up next, we are going to be involved in another webinar later this month. For those of you that are not familiar, k6.org is a great cybersecurity risk management assessment best practices group out there. Very, very good folks. And come check that out. That's going to be on April 29th. And you can go out to k6.org/events to learn more about this upcoming event that we're going to be helping facilitate and sponsor. So Cody, Diana, thank you so much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it. Love the outfits, looking great in the managed methods gear. And thank you so much for helping us out today. And to our folks out there in the virtual world, thank you so much for joining today's session and participating. If you'd like to learn more, managedmethods.com, and we're happy to help you. With that said, we'll bid everyone goodbye and thank you for joining us today.